But that same dedication and humbleness that Theo Pinson and Jamal Crawford displayed, just to be still attached to the game, what they're willing to sacrifice, be a great teammate, do what the team needs them to do. That same thought pattern is what a lot of younger players today are struggling, as we see an influx of a lot of high-performing raw talent, but sometimes it doesn't necessarily translate. Jonathan Kuminga, Killian Hayes, there's a lot of players coming into the league, and that transition into molding their game into an NBA play style that results in winning, there's a lot of clashes there. And super mega sports agent Rich Paul sat down with Carmelo Anthony and they spoke on this. How a lot of younger players are struggling with that transition into the league, and a lot of them do need to carry that mindset that Theo Pinson and Jamal Crawford had at the end of their careers, because not all these players are going to come into the NBA and be in a position to have the green light to take a bunch of shots. I mean, just looking at this year's potential lottery teams, the Jazz, the Blazers, the Nets, they might have enough room for a player to come through and just have the green light to make mistakes, take a bunch of shots, average maybe his 16 to 20 points a game. But other than that, there's not a lot of room for the rest of the NBA teams, as there's an influx of talent in almost every single team, whether they're struggling or they're good. The Wizards have Alex Sarr, Jordan Poole, Kyle Kuzma. The Pistons have a bunch of young talent over there. The Spurs have Stephen Castle, Wemby, Vessel. The Bulls have Patrick Williams, Kobe White, Zach LaVine, Lonzo Ball. It's sort of 50-50 for a lottery pick to come to that team and just have the green light to do what he wants. So you see where a lot of rookies, unfortunately, no matter how high their draft profile is, are going to have to adapt this mindset that Jamal Crawford and Theo Pinson had. Or else that potential talent just ends up getting wasted, especially in the parity era that the league is headed into today. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
What's the better path?
Like, what will deliver the most complete player to the league after that journey?
To me, I think, for me, what I've learned just in the past couple of years, going to a school or playing the most fundamental basketball you can play while you're young. Having an understanding of how to play without the ball, being coached really hard, not being allowed to just do any and everything you want to do, which kids call getting in their bag today. Because when you get to the NBA, you have to start in a role. And a lot of guys that's talented and don't make it or don't last, it's not because they can't play in the NBA. And you wonder, and these guys don't understand. They be like, oh man, but I averaged 50 every time I got in, I scored. Yeah, but you're not starring in a role. So you can cook, right? You can cook, but you can't collaborate, right? So you can cook, but you can't digest information. You can cook, but you're not willing to not be the focal point. And you don't understand when you take a step back from the league and look at, he's never had to be in that situation until he was at the end of his career. But he had so much confidence in himself, and his legacy was already cemented already. So when he came to that point in his career, he's now loving the game. And he went through a thing where me and him talked where he just wanted to be back in the league and do it his way. You talking about a guy who made all the money, all the all-star, did game winners, all of that. But his love for the game brought him to that space at that time. These guys, that's at the end of the road. He'd already had the pot of gold, the rainbow, everything. These guys aren't even on the road, and they're not getting opportunity because they don't understand how to start in a role. And it's just one thing that's sad, because all these high-ranked guys, they don't really last. But it's because of that more than anything, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think it's to your point, it starts with the development. Like, you're not being taught the game the right way no more at a young age. So when you go to these combines and these colleges and try to make the pros, as you start getting older and bigger and stronger, everybody else is doing the same thing, right? Somebody you may have seen at 6'1" this year may come back 6'4" next year, and 6'7" 2 years after that. So when you get to that level, to your point as a role player, and I can attest to this because I had to, at the end, to your point, be at peace with that. I had to be away from the game in order for me to appreciate, okay, you know what? I'm gonna be at peace. I'm gonna do it my way. I wanna have fun. I wanna enjoy the game, but I'm gonna accept my role. And I had to take all.
Now, Melo is a product of his era. When he came into the league, it was more kind of star-driven, ISO, you got to get your points. But the league today is definitely more talented from the first person to the 15th man on the bench. And in this parity era, these younger players are going to have to come in more with the mindset that Rich Paul was talking about, where they have to come in and accept a role, kind of star in that role. And who knows, from night to night, they may end up in a situation where they're starring in that 1A role where they have to score. But the league today is very different than the I'ma do me era, where a bunch of guys were trying to jack up shots, trying to imitate Michael Jordan after he retired, for the most part shooting about 40% from the field. And some of their teammates consisted of guys who were just strong and were rebounders, not necessarily scorers. They were kind of setup men and enforcers. Today's league is pace and space. A lot of guys can beat players off the dribble. It's a complete different ball game. And one player I could point out that has been struggling with this ever since he came into the league is Cam Reddish.
Off the ego hat and the pride hat of just like, you know what? I'm gonna be cool with averaging 13 because that's my role, right? I can't look at it like, oh, I'm averaging 13, I'm averaging 15, and comparing that to where I was at in New York, averaging 28, 29,
right?
Because of the fact that I had to accept my role. So if I'm doing that in my role, I feel like I'm having a very successful year. And that's something that mentally that I had to really not play the game, but really accept that and understand like, damn, in order for me to really have fun with this game, I gotta accept this role for me, right? And I don't think kids have an opportunity from a young age to understand what playing a role is, because you're taught roll the ball out and go play. You got the best handles, you're the best player at that age.
And it's also the AAU culture. It's, oh, he's the nicest player. We're going to fly him out to play for this team. Then the very next week, we're going to fly him out to a different part of the country to play for another team where there's a different shot clock. The basket is a different height. It's all sorts of different rules and regulations. It's a very sticky situation in the AAU circuit. And also for a lot of these kids, I got to shoot them bail. The mentality that it took for them to be a top pick, a top guy. It's hard to tell them to tamper that down once they get into the league and fit into a team concept. That transition, it may take some time, but meanwhile, their European and international counterparts are taught basketball like that off rip. And every week from a youth level, they actually move up according to their talent, not based off of their age. And they play with the same rules, the same height with the hoops, and the same regulations all through. So it's a complete different system, and it makes sense why a lot of the international players are coming along and they're dominating the game.
Until you meet somebody that's the best player at that age and realize you ain't developed the right way. And that's the problem, that when they get to the pros, and even college, even some colleges, when they get to that level, they lost. Yeah. They struggle the first year. Then they confidence is low. Then they gotta get in the transfer portal. Because you're not putting the work in.
Yeah.
You ain't understanding.
One thing you just said, Melo, people understand how you embrace it at the end of your career is really 95% of our league's actual careers.
Absolutely.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
So
I don't think the kids know that. Rich Paul, I'm pretty sure you know that. The kids do not know that. They assume that they're going to be in the role where they're going to be scoring 20 points per game the same way they were in that role during their high school years and AAU years. They were considered the best player. And that's the problem with the AAU circuit. That is a major problem. They find out someone is super nice, they'll fly them out. They never practice or play with their team before, but because their talent is super high, they just instantly give them the ball and just kind of ISO and let them do them. And none of that translates even in a college level, let alone the NBA.
You know, it's tough, but that's the truth.
Have you ever had to have that conversation with an athlete that you represent, where it's just like, hey, bro, listen, you might have been the guy at whatever academy, but right here, You just need to get.
I've
15
had it
rebounds.
at the beginning. I've also had it at the end. And you know, the other issue is a lot of these guys are surrounded by a lot of people that really don't have the right information. And you know, good, right, or indifferent, whatever it is, still you have to be able to, if you're around these guys, you have to be able to really check yourself and realize that I can't just say certain things because they're searching. They're searching for the words that they want to hear. They're not really searching for the right words. They're searching for, no different than a little kid going to you and you say, Dad, can I get, no. Mom, can I, no. When they get to grandma, she say, yeah. Y'all both said no. And then she said, yeah, that's who I'm going with. It's the same thing in our industry a lot of times. And I don't want to be a person that people say, oh, well, man, you know, like, you don't want me to listen to my dudes or my families. No, it's not that. It's just that what I'm telling you is what I know is coming right from the horse's mouth, right to you, because we're all in this together trying to help you better position yourself.
But there's a middleman between Rich Paul relaying that information. And the middleman is the whole business of the AAU circuit. We see Overtime Elite, how they came up. Nike is a middleman in between that. All the sponsors. Oh, this is a Nike kid. He can't go play against another top player that's an Adidas kid. There's a lot of middlemen and a lot of business entity, multi-million-dollar, if not billion-dollars, with this NIL money coming in. There's just a bunch of industries in the middle. You got grown men following kids around, recording them, putting together their highlight tapes. You know, they're getting paid. They're monetizing it through social media platforms. Kids are going viral. This is a whole entity. This is a whole industry. We're talking about full-grown adults just following kids around. That's their cameraman. These kids have cameramen. Even when they score, they're looking for the cameras to celebrate and point at. This is a whole different machine, a whole different monster that is in between the leagues and the youth. So Rich Paul talking about he has to watch his tone of how he speaks to these players. He's really talking about the machine behind these players that are kind of empowering them and giving them sometimes a false sense of reality.
They're seeing it from a perspective of most people that have an athlete that they're connected to, they only live in that athlete's world. And that's the only world they have to care about. And so you only seeing it out of one lens. If this person don't get in the game, if this person don't get a lot of shots, etc., you're only seeing it out of that one lens. Why they not getting this right now? Well, me, I'm looking at it holistically, and I can only give it to you from a real place of education at the highest level, not because it's something that you want to hear or not because I'm trying to bamboozle you. I'm really trying to help. And that's a tough balancing act as for somebody in my position, right? So, but that's the role I have to play, and it's okay.
You gotta do it, man. Sometimes you gotta be the
Yeah,
man.
gotta be
You know what I'm
it.
saying? You gotta do the hard
You gotta be
steps.
it, yeah.
And that road will get tougher with all that NIL money getting in. A lot of NBA players today coming into the league, that is not their first six-figure checks that they're cashing in weekly. So these are brand new times for the NBA, but again, with this media landscape, we get the insight directly from the source, so we can break it down and put it into proper context.